Hi everybody, it's me again. I hope you all are having a good 2025 so far. Today I'm going to read you chapter 9 of my book, Wildmoore, Wrath of Zane. Hope you enjoy. Chapter 9, Odds Against Many. Zane furiously paced in the main hall of the shadowy rock palace after returning from the Lion Realm, trying to produce a plan. Sadly, nothing seemed to come to mind, causing him to let out a frustrated scream, and a dark, misty beam to shoot out of his palm and hit the perch once more, causing Hebron to fly off from it again. "Hey, watch where you're hitting with your magic, Zane!" Hebron squawked. Zane angrily turned to the raven and shouted, Don't make me turn you into a cooked chicken, you idiotic dunce." Just then, Maurice walked in and asked, "Did the lions vanquish?" Zane slammed his hand against the wall and shouted, "No, that little girl overpowered me with that cursed necklace, letting those cowardice creatures live." "Sir, have you considered taking the necklace away to render the girl powerless?" Maurice suggested. But Zane sharply turned to his fellow warlock and snarled, "No, the necklace cannot be taken off by those who possessed it. The necklace will not leave whoever had ownership of it. So there's no chance to make that girl defenseless." "How about taking her army away and sending them all to our dungeon?" Brom asked. This seemed like an intriguing idea in Zane's eyes, and Maurice could see the brief look of satisfaction before returning back to frustration when he said, "She already has allies from the warriors as well as the knights, that wretched guardian dragon, and now that cowardice lion." "Then abduct only the dragon and the lion, while the men conduct a plan to restrain the warriors and knights from assisting the girl. Once the time is right, the girl and the wolf pup will be the only ones left. Both of them will be defenseless," Maurice suggested. Zane's spirits began to soar when he heard Maurice's plan. And with the rest of his men, there would be a chance to take down this girl and her army, while also formulating a plan of his own, revealing the truth about her lineage. And she will despise the people she trusted, as well as her own mother, for lying to her. And she will have to give up the crystal necklace. This plan has to work. It has to, Zane thought, a menacing smile creeping on his face. Later that night in the village, Natalie watched the warriors and knights prepare tonight's bonfire, with Forward, Tristan, and little Barlow looking on with her. Barlow let out a squeaky yawn and asked, "Natalie, can you read more of that story, please?" Natalie smiled at the wolf pup and replied, "Of course." Curious, Tristan asked, "What kind of story is this?" Forthwind explained, "According to Natalie, this is her favorite childhood story about a boy finding a magical book. And while the characters inside it aren't aware of his existence and vice versa, only one character is. A character called the Childlike Empress." "A childlike empress?" Tristan asked. Natalie looked at the young lion with an amused grin and explained, "That's actually what the character in the story is called, until the main character, the boy Bastion, gave her a name that reminded him of his mother." Fascinated, Tristan asked, "And are there any creatures much like we are?" Forthwind nodded excitedly and explained, "There is a creature called the Ancient One, which is a very large turtle. A large monster called the Rock Biter, And my favorite was a luck dragon named Falcor. Stunned by such a story, Tristan exclaimed, "My word!" Then he asked, "And this is a story from your world?" Natalie nodded with a small smile and replied, "Yeah, my aunt would always read me this story to me when I was little, and every single thing fascinated me. But what truly captured my heart was the main character, because he and I have something in common." "What is it?" Tristan asked. Natalie's smile then diminished into a saddening frown before she finally answered, her heart growing heavy. "We're both motherless." Barlow looked at Natalie with a saddening look of his own. He could easily understand what it was like growing up without a mother. And oddly enough, Forthwind and Tristan both shared a similar understanding. Forthwind only grew up with his two siblings at Dragon's Pass, as their parents only took care of them for 2 months before disappearing when he was young. Tristan was only just a young cub when he lost his mother from the Dark Warlocks, because aside from those practicing opaque magic, those men are also poachers, where the men would kill animals all over Wildmoore for either food, fur, or worst of all, sport. It was actually because of his mother that he learned a lot about Natalie's world, especially his mundane counterparts, among other things. Suddenly, before Natalie could recover herself and read the story to the three animals, a large boom sounded nearby, causing the villagers to scream in horror. Alarmed, Natalie put her book back in her book bag before swinging it over her shoulder and protectively scooping up Barlow in her arms. Tristan was already ready to fight whoever was intruding on the village, and Forthan was determined to protect Natalie. The warriors drew their bows and arrows, while the knights drew their swords, preparing themselves to fight the approaching army of the Dark Warlocks, which they could see it heading their way. Natalie could see Zane leading the men, all wearing similarly dark robes, which further explains that they're all sinisterly the same in both clothing and magic. When Zane and his men finally stopped marching, they were now only 15 feet away from Natalie's group. Zane was the first to approach the group and announce, "Wildmoore Forest knights and warriors, and the wretched mundane girl, if you do not want to suffer from our wrath we are about to cause, surrender at your free will." It was Thomas's turn to approach the horrid warlock, and he announced, and we are giving you one last chance, Zane. Stand down, or Natalie will attack you again." Natalie looked at Thomas with a suspicious glare. She had only known this man for a few days, and somehow, oddly enough, he had already vouched for her. Zane just laughed at that remark and said, "Do you really think that this mundane is going to save you all from me and my powerful army? Well, then explain to me how someone like her is fit to defeat someone like me." Amelia stepped up with her bow and arrow still raised and said, "She is a traveler from human earth, who somehow has possession of the necklace meant for the child destined to save us all. Save us from you." Zane just chuckled sinisterly and said, "For such chivalrous beings like you all, you are much idiotic than I suspect you would be. The mundane is the child who is supposedly destined to defeat me, and she has no knowledge about this world as well as who lived here before her. Isn't that right, Thomas. Natalie's heart dropped into her stomach, holding Barlow tightly in her arms when Zane gave Thomas a menacing grin. Scared to hear what this man had to say next, while secretly hoping that this was all a joke. Angrily looked at the elder knight and asked, Thomas, what is he talking about? Zane then gave a mock surprised look and said, Oh, so you haven't told him yet. Well, are you going to tell her, or shall I? Thomas suddenly got angry and drew his sword out to lunge at him. But Zane touched the blade of the sword where it disintegrated into dust, leaving the elder forest knight defenseless. With Thomas's precious sword out of the way, Zane turned to his men and announced, Warlocks, attack! Immediately, the warriors fired their arrows, and the knights charged in with their swords and shields in hand. Amelia turned to Natalie, Tristan, Forthwind, and Barlow, and replied, Go find a safe place to hide, now! Natalie didn't want to leave them behind, but after seeing the scared look in Barlow's eyes, she, Tristan, and Forthwind all bolted towards the woods. True to his word that he had promised to Natalie, he decided to follow closely behind her in order to protect her. He understandably knew that his father would never approve of him helping a stranger from human earth. But it was his kind's duty to help, protect, and serve Wildmoore by any means necessary, even if it meant dying to do so. Meanwhile, a battle between the warlocks, knights, and warriors continued to ensue, with every blast of dark magic, flying myriad of arrows, and swings of bladed swords as one side tried to defend itself from the other. However, one by one, the dark warlocks had the upper hand. However, they were able to subdue the warriors and knights, as well as the older wolves, by destroying the swords, bows, and arrows at a rapid pace, while casting a sleeping spell on the wolves to prevent them from attacking Zane's men. Zane then casted a fire spell to engulf the forest in glorious flames, hoping to draw Natalie, Forthwind, Tristan, and Barlow out. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Suddenly, Maurice, knowing that Zane's plan to draw out Natalie had failed to work, decided to go into the forest so he could go after the girl. Zane held up a hand to stop him and said, Stop! The girl is mine. Zane then bolted into the forest with a sinister look on his face. Thomas saw where Zane was heading, and although he feared the worst, he decided to run after him and hoped to save Natalie, Forthwind, Tristan, and Barlow. One dark warlock attempted to use dark magic to trap him like he did with the other warriors and other knights. But Thomas was too quick for it, as he was fueled by adrenaline, with only one goal in mind: save Natalie and her friends. Back in the forest, Natalie held Barlow tightly in her arms as she, Tristan, and Forthwind began to dodge any growing fire that attempted to trap them all. What's happening? Natalie asked. They must have cast a fire spell to draw all of us out, Tristan said. We must keep moving. Find a place for all of us to regroup and meet back with the others, Forthwind said, but there was no use. With a mountain-sized fire ablaze in front of them, the quartet had nowhere else to run when a familiar voice said, There is nowhere else left for all of you to run. The girl, dragon, and lion all turned to face Zane, and though Barlow cowered in Natalie's arms, Tristan pounced in front of Natalie protectively, and so did Forthwind, honoring his role as a protective guardian dragon for his human counterpart. If you lay a hand on her, Tristan growled, the hair of his mane rising to match his protective anger. Or you'll what? Die like the rest of your cowardice, useless kind? Oh, I will not let a mundane like her defeat me, just like her family had tried to attempt 13 years ago. Zane sneered. At this point, Natalie was getting angry that this man thought he knew anything about her family. So she shouted, stepping around Tristan and Forthwind while putting Barlow down beside the two larger animals. You don't know anything about my family, jerk. Zane wasn't faced by her words this time, and said, his ominous grin never faltering, "Oh, but I do, girl. Your mother and father were all living here, as well as your aunt. Your mother and aunt were forest warriors, while your father was that horrendous forest knight. It is because of your mother, as well as everyone else in her family tree, that someone from my family is dead. And now I will kill you myself, so you will never see the light of day again." He then pointed his staff to release the dark magic, but the light in Natalie's necklace released a beam of its own to counteract the oncoming dark magic. "You're lying, psycho!" Natalie shouted back, "I am not. Your mother and aunt escaped our world so they could protect you from my men and me. You're lucky I don't know how to get to the human earth, so I could try to kill you there. But now that you are here in the flesh, my mission will finally be done, so the likes of you can finally be gone," Zane shouted, once again releasing another stream of dark magic. And the light from Natalie's necklace tried to counteract the beam again. But the dark magic managed to trip Natalie to the ground. Zane walked towards Natalie with his staff in hand and swiftly hit Natalie with it, causing the necklace around her neck to snap off, finally rendering Natalie powerless. Zane didn't think the necklace would ever come off, not even thinking it was possible. But now he was satisfied that the necklace was finally off of this girl, so he replied, "So much for your mother always being there for you. You are clearly nothing special like her. You're just a mundane, horrid, vile little girl." Natalie was weakening by the blow she took from Zane's staff. Her forehead had a small gash. Her nose was bleeding. Her right eye was heavily bruised, as well as her glasses shattered to pieces. Zane was about to hit her violently with his staff again, and his black crystal glowed threateningly, preparing to kill her. However, a strong hand was able to stop the staff in mid-swing. Zane turned to see who had stopped him. It was Thomas. "Get away from her, you monster!" Thomas snarled, and with heroic effort threw Zane as well as his staff into the large fire that had trapped the quartet before. Zane shouted in pain as the fire began to engulf him. Forthwind felt a slight dizziness, which was what Natalie was currently feeling right now. One thing he didn't feel, though, was Natalie falling into deep unconsciousness. Thomas hurried over to see the injuries Natalie endured. The older Forest Knight looked up at Forthwind and demanded, "Forthwind, you and Tristan take her to the Wildmoore castle and tell the king and queen I sent you both. Barlow, you and I will meet them there later, because right now we need to find a safer place to hide." "No, I don't want to leave Natalie behind," Barlow protested. Barlow, we don't have a choice, Thomas said with a gentle tone before turning to Tristan and Fourthwind and demanding them both, now go! The two both nodded as Tristan used his mouth to gently grab Natalie by the shirt collar and nudged her onto Fourthwind's back. Fourthwind flapped his powerful wings to fly himself off the ground, while Tristan bolted off in the direction of the castle. Thomas immediately scooped up Barlow in his arms and picked up the broken necklace before making a run for it, dodging every fire he could muster until he finally reached the desired place that no dark magic would dare to destroy. A synthetic redwood branched woven stable and a well-kept cabin that only very few would seek shelter in if there was a thunderstorm looming over the land, or like in this case, insidious danger. Barlow had never been to such a place like this one before, but didn't seem to care because he only wished to be by Natalie's side, even more so now that she was injured. We need to get to Natalie, Thomas. I don't want to leave her there, Barlow begged. Not until the fire outside lets up, Barlow. Trust me, once the king and queen understand what has been happening from Fourthwind and Tristan, she is in good hands at the castle. And even Zane wouldn't even have the audacity to enter the castle boundaries. Natalie will not be harmed if Zane had tried to get to her first, Thomas assured the wolf pup. However, something else was troubling him. Everything that Zane had done had gotten too far. But what truly got to him was his exposing a long-awaited truth that might change the course of Natalie's life for good. And it might not be anywhere close to good. A few hours later, the fire throughout the forest began to die down. And Zane emerged from the burnt trees with an angered look on his face. However, that was not all he came back from the burning fire with. Zane now had a hideous burnt scar on the right side of his face, and his right eye was severely damaged into blindness. He didn't care, though, because Zane was infuriated that Natalie had escaped from his grasp, again. He then stormed back to the village, where he saw all of his men quickly using their magic to apprehend the forest knights and warriors, while also trapping the knights' wolf companions into cages made from strong steel, making it impossible for the wolves to escape. Maurice noticed Zane storming in and asked, "Sir, are you all right? Where's the girl?" Zane said, seething in anger still. "That wretched dragon and lion took her away to the Wildmoore kingdom, while Thomas ran off with that disgusting little wolf pup. It is not all in vain, sir. We were able to subdue the warriors, knights, and wolves so they couldn't try to surprise us again. I suggest we terminate them all so they could no longer go against us again," Maurice replied. Zane looked over at the trapped group of knights, warriors, and wolves until an idea popped into his head. Zane then replied, "No. Take them back to the palace and lock all of them in our dungeon while I have to make a trip to the Wildmoore kingdom. But sir, you were warned many times by the king and queen never to enter the kingdom boundaries. And they threatened to execute you if you did," Maurice warned. Zane snapped back, "I do not care about that anymore. I only care about destroying that pathetic, wretched mundane." Once that girl is finally gone for good, we're finally going to rule this land. And make the king and queen beg us to spare them. Wait for my signal when I get there. After you're finished locking these horrid scoundrels up. With his mind already made up, Zane stormed off to the direction of the kingdom, while Maurice turned back to the other warlocks and gestured for them to take the warriors, knights, and wolves to the direction of the Shadowy Rock Palace. He looked back at the direction Zane had gone to, with a worrisome look. Asher ran into the forest and saw the massacre that the warlocks had caused, realizing that Natalie was nowhere to be seen. And neither were the forest knights and warriors, so he immediately knew that the girl had something to do with it. Not only this chaos, but he knew she had something to do with his son leaving the realm, so he growled to himself. This madness needs to stop, and that girl needs to be punished for all the sins she caused. With this in thought, Asher raced to the direction of the Wildmoore castle to ask for a meeting with the king and queen. A meeting concerning what immoral things Natalie had committed. Okay, that was chapter 9. My apologies for my reading. My voice is a little scratchy, but nothing too bad, I promise. Well, I hope you guys enjoy it, and stay tuned for chapter 10. Goodbye.